Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Duncan Thomson. Duncan is the Group CEO of Kickon Group Australia. Welcome to the podcast, Duncan.
Hi, Jonno. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. And first of all, can you tell everyone, all of our listeners, many of whom are outside of Australia, tell us about Kickon Group Australia and also what you do in your role as Group CEO.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Kickon Group Australia is a national hospitality company. We currently own a range of venues. The range, remember, from large scale pubs to sort of small precincts, restaurants, bars, a little bit of gaming, some accommodation. And we're certainly Kickon Group was sort of formed just about 12 months ago, and acquired a small group of venues and have since been on a bit of an acquisition pathway since then. So a big part of my role is obviously to oversee the current operations. Each business is set up as its own entity, so each entity has a general manager and a pretty strong management structure around that. So it's really around what we refer to our business governance, which is just good financial planning. But we have three key traffic lights that we track. The most important for us is our team engagement survey. So team engagement we track pretty heavily on a weekly basis, and that's without doubt our number one focus. The second main traffic light is our customer service, and then the third is finance. And some people kind of question me and go, "Oh, it seems a bit back to front," but we feel like if you can get your people right and you can serve your customers right, then the finances will start to will work themselves out. So we've spent a lot of time building that structure and working through internally with my other directors about what we want the company to be, and therefore that creates a bit of a foundation for growth. So a really key focus for me over the next 2 or 3 years is seeking acquisitions that we look at in sort of two or probably three portfolios, to be honest. Is one which is the acquisition of existing venues that we think we can sort of take over, enhance physically, with a refurb, and apply our sort of business structure to it to increase profitability. The second stuff we're doing a lot of work in is sort of green sites where we partner with a developer. And usually those are the larger kind of footprint where there might be hotel, multiple sites within a precinct. So we've got a few of those on the go that would probably take 2 or 3 years to develop. And then the other part to our portfolio is what we call scalable and saleable. So that's keeping an eye open for sort of concepts that we think we might be able to replicate, grow reasonably quick, and then sort of sell part of that off. So it's been an exciting time. I mean, we sort of really spent a lot of time throughout COVID when the industry was obviously pretty hit pretty hard, and I don't know, we're sort of glasses half full type operators. So we really felt that was a great opportunity to spend time internally building what we feel is our structural pillars and our cultural pillars of our company. So then when we come out of COVID, which we are now, we're really geared up to grow and have an exciting growth phase ahead of us, which has been good.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible, and particularly incredible what you are doing and what you've been doing, as a group in light of, like you said, COVID, and now starting to come out of COVID. So exciting times ahead. Well, let's jump into your story. I want to start with your childhood and growing up, Duncan. I'm interested to know, are there any moments or even themes from that season in your life that really shaped you into the person and the leader you are today?
Look, really good question. I think thinking about it, and when you put it in context of leadership, I mean, I think I grew up in a pretty sort of happy. I was quite lucky with my childhood, but mum and dad were always very kind of focused on pursue what makes you happy. So, and I think that made me a little bit sort of glasses half full that I've touched on before, sort of happy-go-lucky kind of kid that was willing to try anything, whether it be sport or drama at school or whatever. And I think that sort of foundation has sort of stayed with me in my professional career. When someone throws an opportunity at me or a challenge, I sort of jump at it. Sometimes it's been not a great thing, but more often than not it has. So I think when it comes to leadership, the style that has really resonated with me around that is really that kind of proactive, positive, sort of empathetic approach where you're always looking for the best out of people. So sure, you might have some staff that are struggling or not performing very well, but let's let's take that on board as feedback for us, as perhaps we failed them as leaders, and how can we develop them, and what can we do to turn them around before we start, working down the performance management cycle. So I think a lot of it's just the environment that I kind of grew up in was quite supportive for me to try things and take a few risks, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting to me what comes out when, and like you said, obviously some of your personality and your perspective, which it sounds like has even been pivotal in the past couple of years with 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 the group and what you're doing, has really come out of that. Like you said, the way your parents viewed the world. Um, excuse me. I'm interested to know, in terms of leadership opportunities, as you reflect, Duncan, can you think of one of the first opportunities you had in life that you think back to and go, oh yeah, I guess that was a leadership opportunity. You were in the deep end casting vision for something, or maybe it was when you were really young, or in a team or sport, or where you were managing people for the first time. What comes to mind?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was obviously pretty passionate sportsman when I was younger, and pretty competitive on that side of things. But I think from a professional point of view, I think in hospitality, it's one of those industries that's easy to get into when you leave school, whether you're unsure or it's a part-time job with uni, and it's fun. Like you meet great people, you have lots of fun times in a bar, you sort of work hard, play hard kind of scenario. But then you get to a certain point where you think, well, I've either really got to get out of this industry, or I've got to take it seriously. And I think for me, probably there was a moment where I was probably in that stage where sort of, working in bars and working late night and sort of enjoying life as a young person. But I got a phone call out of the blue of someone that said, look, I've got an opportunity, I'd love you to come down and run this large venue as our general manager. And I'd never really thought about being a general manager before. And I just said, yes, it sounds great. And I remember distinctly being on the plane, when the pilot sort of, puts the accelerator down, the plane's about to take off, and I sat back in my seat like, holy hell, what am I doing? I don't know how to do this. And, you have that, that moment of fear, but I thought, well, too late now. I've already accepted. I'm on my way in, so I just sort of went in there full of gusto and confidence, and just sort of did what I felt was right in terms of, if I was a staff member, how would I want to be treated? And that was probably sort of how I started, just by kind of taking the first opportunity that was thrown at me, I guess.
I always think that's encouraging, though, to those listening who might be in, they're more in a role where they're wanting to lead and they haven't. And so often we think, okay, what are the steps, like the perfect linear path I need to take to become a great leader? And it's almost never the case. Every now and then someone has that sort of story where you go, oh yeah, that is pretty textbook. But most people, I'm always surprised how often it is a case of, well, someone said, how about you be a general manager? I went, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then I got on a plane and thought, what have I done? And then
Yeah.
began probably some of the biggest learning, moments of your life as you started leading people, which is, I think it's just one of the most challenging parts of any business.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's a Richard Branson quote where he talks about something along the lines of, I may not get it exactly right, but it's like the next time someone offers you an opportunity, you're not sure how to do it, say yes and work out how to later. I mean, some people might say that's a bit naive and you could stumble and fall, but I think, so much of it is just sort of that confidence to go, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go, because what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Yeah.
I think as long as you go into it with the right mindset, with a view of, I want to be good in this role, and I want to be a good leader, and I want to be successful for the group or the individual that I'm working for, I would pretty much back anybody to say, if you go in with that mindset, any hurdle or challenge or problem that you face, there's enough resources and support out there to work out how to get through it. But if you go in there too cocky or too arrogant, as if you know everything, then I think that's when people sort of stumble, which is probably why, we've all sort of grown up and worked with good people and bad people, and you probably learn as much from the bad leaders as you do the good ones when you finally get to that position, because you go, shit, I don't want to be like that, because I remember how that made me feel.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Oh yeah, 100%. I'd have to say, if you did a in-depth survey of all leaders around the world and looked at the things they've most deeply learned, I would guess that most of the real deep, like I'm talking that deep learning where you go, I am never going to, or I will always prioritize. So much of that I think comes from personal pain. Often when we've experienced other leaders and we've just looked on and gone, okay, or I think often even being in the shoes of the person who's on the team who feels disempowered or feels ignored and anonymous, and you go, I will never make my team feel like that. I think you're right. I think it is, as a rule, I think we often learn more across the board from those, like you said, bad leaders than we do from the good.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I look back on some of what I would call the highlights of the leadership I've done, and a lot of it is when you've turned someone around. It's not necessarily about the superstars that have worked for you that are smashing their budget or just being amazing. Like, they're always great to work with, of course, but sometimes you've got a troubled kid, or might have come from a challenging background, or they're just not performing well, and you actually invest a bit of time, and then all of a sudden you start to see the development, the self-confidence, the growth, and then they end up achieving great things. That's the stuff that I go home and pat myself on the back and go, wow, that was really cool. And I
Yeah,
think those moments, they stick with you.
I think that, and you know what? I think that is a big point of difference in every industry, but particularly hospitality. I think if you can do that, I think the opportunity. There's so many people who step into jobs in hospitality and are assuming they're going to go and do something else, a bit like your story. And if you can really invest in them and really like because I'm guessing there'd be a lot of amazing say people with a great future in business who wouldn't put two and two together and necessarily think that hospitality could be the pathway to business. They just may not put those two and two together. So you're not only doing the right thing by them, you're not only doing great things for your team, but I'm guessing as you invest in those, not just your superstars, but also really investing in some of the, getting alongside some of the people who need that extra time and maybe need that extra effort to really help them learn some stuff. Maybe they didn't learn it in family of origin or whatever, and they're learning for the first time some things about how to act or how to run or be part of running a business. I think sometimes you're growing some of your best leaders down the track, and in every industry, but particularly hospitality. I think that's an opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I had one guy who was just not working out in one of our venues a few years ago, and I was like, okay, I was working with a different company then, and he just wasn't gelling with the staff. The staff weren't gelling with him, and and anyway, I went to our managing director. I said, look, I just need to get a redundancy package for this kid and move him on. And he said, look, no problem, Duncan, I'll approve that. He said, on one condition. I said, what's that? He said, well, just spend 2 weeks with him. And then if after those 2 weeks he's still no good, bad attitude, bad culture, not performing, et cetera, then no worries, make him redundant. I was like, well, what's 2 weeks going to do? He goes, he just needs you. I was like, oh, I don't really know what that meant. But anyway, long story short, I spent 2 weeks with him, and sure enough, he started to change, and the team connected, and that particular business, went from losing money to making a lot of money really, really quick. And we got lots of awards and accolades. That was all great. But the real story came many years after that. I was walking through Crown Casino with my fiance, now wife, and this particular guy came bounding out of one of the clothing stores and was doing sort of like a PR launch. Gave me this big hug and, how you going? I said, oh, great. What are you up to? He goes, oh, I'm working with this PR company now. I'm so happy. And I said, oh, that's unreal. And he goes, I owe it all to you. And I was like, what do you mean you don't owe it to me by working in a PR company? He goes, no. He said, you gave me the confidence to believe in myself. And through that process of what we did together in that venue, I realised that I didn't want to be in hospitality, and that's why I wasn't enjoying it. I really wanted to go out and work in PR. And anyway, when he got this job, and I was like, oh, and then I was walking off, and my wife just gave me a little nudge, and she said that was a pretty cool moment, and I was like, wow, yeah, it was pretty cool. So sometimes it's not the obvious, like business performance. Sometimes you forget that you can actually have an impact on people, and it really. I'm not saying I was a leadership guru, but it was just time. It's just
Yeah.
getting to know someone.
Yeah, one of my mates always says that. I mean, he says it about parenting, but I think it's true in leadership as well. That that love is spelt Time, and we don't like throwing the love word around too much in business. But really, people want to know that you care, and I guess people like it. It's that sense. I'm always interested when I chat with people about great bosses they've had. They always stop, and there's always something about they really like in your story there took the time. They really took the time. They really took the time to try to understand me. They took the time to go, you know what, I could rush ahead, but I'm going to stop and help you catch up with this, because I know if you get this, it's going to be really good for you. And I think that comes out like 100% of the time when people reflect on great leaders they've enjoyed working for.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And it's the one thing that I think we need to reflect on more, because we all get caught up, and we have a saying at work where we just say busy is not an excuse. And it doesn't mean we want our people to work harder. It just means that sometimes you just got to stop and go, wow, feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What's the main thing? Keep the main thing the main thing. Go, okay. And I know in my role as a CEO, we work with a business coach, which is really helpful. And he's sort of saying, look, some of the challenges that I find personally is you feel like, oh, I'm the CEO, I need to know everything. And he goes, you don't need to know everything. You just need to be informed and trust your people around you. And it's okay not to be busy, but to think, because they're relying on you to create this future and this pathway. Yeah. So running around, sitting in meetings, being busy, and then come home from work, oh wow, well, I had a super busy day. Like, yeah, but really, what did you come up with? Whereas sitting in a cafe having a coffee, or going for a walk, or walking the dog, or exercise, or whatever it might be, and allowing your mind just to kind of go, okay, what does the next 12 months look like? What do I want to achieve? Can be more important and more valuable to the greater organisation than we call it, the busy fool syndrome. You run around, you're super busy, but you're not really getting much done, but you sort of are, and then we see that a lot in hospitality.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's so true. So speaking of sort of mentors, who are some of the people for you that have mentored you along the way, or had the biggest positive influence on your leadership so far?
Look, I've had, like I said, I'm getting close to 50 now, so I was sort of in that age of, working through the old school managers, that were hard taskmasters and tough. And so I sort of came through that, where there probably wasn't, as many inspirational leaders as what has been in my recent times. But one guy in particular, a guy called Andrew Cox, who's the managing director of the Imperium Group, he taught me a lot just by watching the way he worked. He was quite a hard task master, but also very supportive. He was really able to, and he ran multiple companies, very successful entrepreneur, but he could dive into the detail really quick and pinpoint something that was on his radar, and then pull himself out of it, and then get back to being that sort of big picture leader, which I always admired. And sometimes it was hard, because you go into his office and you'd be sort of shitting yourself a little bit, because the conversation could go anywhere. But it taught me to go, so you got to know your numbers, or you got to know your business. And it's also okay if you don't know. Don't try and flub the answer. I got caught out a few times earlier with him trying to, and then he'd just say to me, it's okay. If you don't know the answer to that, just say, I don't know, because I'd prefer you to tell me the facts and the detail than some fluffy half-assed answer. So if you don't have the facts and the detail, just say, I don't quite have that. Let me come back to you. He goes, and that's okay. So he also taught me a bit about, don't just give everyone lip service, but know your stuff. There was another guy called Paul Lonergan, who in my hotel days, we ran sort of Ridges Hotel. He was one of those sort of older school big guys with a really powerful presence, but he was one of those people that always took the time to say hi to everyone, and he was the big dog of the company, but would know the name of the doorman or go and speak to the housekeeping ladies and stuff like that. So he taught me, the power of humility and how, regardless of it can actually be more powerful if someone who was in a role like he was, that was in charge of the whole country, the power that he would show just simply by engaging with staff that, say, some of the managers in the hotel wouldn't normally, and they go, oh, wow, if he's doing it, I can do it. And those little subtleties, I think, were some really key learnings that I've certainly adapted.
Yeah, they're great stories. What about, I had someone on the podcast once and they used this word of the idea of a shift, an aha moment where there was a bit of a shift and something changes in how you think about leadership or think about the world. Can you think of any moments like that for you in your career so far where something shifted or you just had an aha moment about something in leadership?
I think probably two parts. One, I had a pretty bad personal situation happen that kind of almost sort of broke me emotionally at one point, and it really triggered. I remember sort of being upset and not sure how I could work it out, and then just something flicked in my head that said, just solve it, and that sort of put me on the pathway of studying mindset and how to build positivity and the like. That sort of led me down that pathway of not just wanting to be successful in a career, but wanting to be a really good leader and wanting to understand what that looks like and what are the skills I need to learn. So I think that trigger in my personal life really kind of flowed into my professional life. And I think probably an aha moment I had, as a lot of hospo people do, you always want to build your own business. So at one point I had built my own sort of cafe and wine bar, which was probably one of my greatest accomplishments, but also one of my greatest failures, because you wanted to do it all yourself and it was great. But I remember that moment going, wow, what have I done? And it's not just you're sitting in a meeting looking at spreadsheets. You've actually got to deliver.
So the numbers got real. I don't know if it's a word, but it's like they got realer than ever before, because suddenly they're your numbers and it's your bottom line, and absolutely.
It's easy to sort of talk big numbers on a spreadsheet, but when it's your own, you really start to second guess yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an interesting. I think that's a really interesting experience, because that really resonates with me running my own business with Clarity, and doing consulting. Is that just the difference between doing, say, numbers for someone else and then when it's yours there is a level of depth and a level of seriousness that about everything that really gives you a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been a great thing for me to have in my back pocket, because you're the accountant, the manager, the plumber, the electrician. You're sort of the everything, and every dollar makes a big impact. I think where I stumbled, as a lot of people do when they start their own business, they built the whole business around myself, but then that has a knock-on effect into sort of family life and the like. But certainly some of the proudest and most scariest moments was around that, building your own business, where you're 100% exposed and 100% accountable. You can't blame anyone. You can't say, was the market shift or this, or Bob didn't get the report on time. There's nowhere to hide, and you feel totally exposed. But that is also really kind of satisfying and rewarding to have gone through that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's jump into Leadership Express. The first question for you, Duncan, what is a book that you've gifted to other people or something that you recommend?
The E-Myth. There's a few of them by Richard Gerber, I think. It's probably one. Talks a lot about sort of the entrepreneurial spirit. He's got a really good, for the first book's quite small, just talks about how to have a entrepreneurial mindset. I think that's one I've rattled off a fair bit to others.
Mm. Yeah, actually, it was funny because I could hear some of that book in what you were just discussing, right? Around make sure you don't start a business, build it all around yourself. That's like the myth.
Yes,
In a nutshell, is how not to do that. And so, yeah, when you were describing that, I was
yeah,
thinking of that
yeah.
book. So, makes perfect sense that that book has been such a yeah, and I love it. What such a great book around. And yeah, I mean, it's for everyone, but particularly those who are in any sort of entrepreneurial, like you said, it's really important to get that thinking from day one to try not to build it just around yourself. It's a great idea. Um, Next question: what's a big problem or challenge that you see leaders in hospitality facing today?
Well, I mean, not to keep talking about the COVID word, but there's a lot of people that are emotionally burnt out just having to deal with the pivoting and the being nimble and the change in government requirements that I think a lot of operators, especially people that have owned their own business, are and only now finding that burnout coming through. And look, for us, we are on the acquisition hunt, so we're actually looking for those kind of businesses and companies, and we see a lot of it. Because I think when you're in it and when it's all happening, you're just trying to survive, and you're in that model, and people are shifting to takeaway businesses or whatever it might be. But then once you kind of get out of it and you're going to move back into your normal business cycle, I think that's when the emotional impact of what we've all gone through starts to hit. So that's probably, I think, one of the most worrying parts to our industry. But I think if you flip the conversation, it's also the greatest opportunity, where not just to acquire new businesses, but there's a lot of people out there that are rethinking what they have done. So having a bit of an open mind on how they can shift and change, I think will have a great impact to the
Mm,
industry. I mean, we talk about a labour crisis and things like that, but
yeah,
it's just making us be better at recruitment.
yeah,
We
yeah.
complain about not being able to find good staff. It's just making us be better at our onboarding and our training. And so I
Hmm.
think, although lots of people are complaining about it, the knock-on effect will be really beneficial to the employee, because all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's a greater chance they're going to be matched with the right employer and the right employment environment. The employer
Hmm.
is going to be more committed to training and developing, because people become such an important commodity, which sounds dumb to say because they should always be. But I
Yes.
think COVID's sort of slapped everyone in the face a little bit to say, hey, you can't take it for granted. I think a little bit with customers as well, because we've all missed going to the pub and getting our favourite latte and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think the two are very closely aligned. What was the biggest issue is also our biggest opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's well said. Okay, this one's a bit of a fun one, but it could also be something serious. You can pick a movie or TV show that is a favorite of yours or really impacted you.
Um, One I sort of joke about a little bit is the old TV series called Cheers.
Yes.
That some of my staff kind of laugh at because I'm probably showing my age, but I'd use that as the example of sometimes it's just so simple. Like in the if you know the
Hmm.
the scene, when Norm, who's the big guy that sits at the end of the bar, comes into the bar and everyone goes, Norm, and you go, sometimes great customer experience can be as simple as that, just making
Yeah.
someone feel super welcome. And
Mm.
that's all it is. And they just go, oh, yeah, bloody the Cheers story. I'm like, it can be that simple. Just make them feel good. And so, yeah, that's probably one that,
That's
I mean,
great.
probably
No,
didn't
no,
come.
one of my favorite shows of all time is Frasier, which is obviously
Oh, yeah, yeah,
taken out of Cheers because Frasier was
yeah,
one of the characters in Cheers.
yes.
I love that show, and I find it hilarious. And yeah, but then it is a bit like Cheers, where you try to help other people, get on board with it, and they don't always get it. So, but I love Cheers is a great recommendation for and that's awesome that you love it so much. Okay, last question. This has been so much fun getting to to chat. I've been really looking forward to chatting with you actually because I haven't had too many leaders in hospitality on, and so I've been it's been great to be able to focus in a bit on that. But as we wrap up, if you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say to them?
I think be clear about the difference between confidence and cockiness. That you want to be someone that people choose to follow.
I like it. Yeah. And that humility, that confidence that has humility with it, not a cockiness that's afraid to be wrong or afraid to look silly.
Yeah, you don't want to be part of us, I think, in leaders, you don't mind a bit of the limelight or, that sort of stuff, but it's also, that shouldn't be the only reason to do it, but be confident in yourself, be confident in your people around you, but know that, people should choose who to follow. And if you get that right, and if they choose to follow you, then I think you're on the right path.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good, challenging thought for a lot of listeners to go away and think about is what's the difference between confidence and cockiness, and where do I sit on that spectrum? So good. Well, I want to just ask, how can people connect with you online? And if they want to find out more about the Kickon group, how can people find you and the Kickon group online?
Yeah, sure. So they can connect through me via LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on that as a platform to share what we're doing as a group and build the professional network and help others as required. Kickon Group, we've obviously got a website, kickongroup.com. And that's probably the easiest way, but I certainly encourage many of your listeners who want to connect personally, then reach out to me via LinkedIn, and if we can share stories and build network, or if there's anything I can do to help them, I'm more than happy to.
Love it. So good. Well, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Such a fun episode. So many great ideas and concepts from Duncan today. Don't forget, I also have the Jonno White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast. So you can go and continue to invest in your leadership. But I want to finish by saying a massive thank you to you, Duncan, for being so generous with your time and, sharing some of those stories from your life. I really value that, and being so much fun to spend time with. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
No problem. My pleasure, Jonno.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.